Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. And this is a special edition of Missing 411. Yes, I'm going to say a special edition because it's pretty special. And, every once in a while, even we find a case that blows our minds. And first of all, I can't explain it. Don't ask me to. But I get much more satisfaction out of researching than I do out of most things in life. Can't explain it. It's kind of like fishing. Every once in a while you find a whopper. And they seem to come in unusual streams. I guess that's what I call it, streams, flows. And like you'll get one case in California, they get 2, 3, 4. I can't explain it. And lately I've been on a run on Michigan cases. Now, Michigan is a very special state to me. There's a missing airliner there, Northwest Airlines flight that was never found. Disappeared. Gone. Search plane goes out and tries to find it. It's gone too. And of course we have the U.S. Air Force flight that was scrambled by Canada, asked by the U.S. to go chase a UFO that was flying over Lake Superior. Left Kinross Air Force Base, disappeared, never found. And then we have a plethora of hunters, hikers, people who have disappeared. And one of the most unusual cases ever is a student goes cross-country skiing, goes out onto the ice, sees the tracks. Searchers see the tracks go out onto the ice. A hole goes in the ice on Lake Superior, and there's no return tracks, and everyone believes the student died. And then months later, he says he wakes up a couple of miles from his parents' home in Massachusetts with no memory about what happened. Yeah, do I think Michigan is a strange place? Oh, you just don't know. So I'm going to go over a couple of things that are important. I want you to concentrate on Newberry and Kinross Charter Township. This is where the Air Force flight took off, went over Lake Superior, disappeared. Drummond Island, which I did a presentation for you about just recently. Over here, young boy disappeared. And in Newberry, Michigan, there's an entire cluster of missing people right here. And remember, the most important part, this Air Force fighter took off chasing a UFO per Canada. So yes, there are UFOs out here. But what am I talking to you about today that's really important to me? It involves a young boy. A story I guarantee nobody has ever heard of it. Not on the internet, but every copycat in the world is going to take this case and run with it. You watch. Frustrating part of life. People steal from me all the time. It's going to be one of those cases they steal. Involves a boy named Lowell. Nickname, I don't get nicknames very often. His nickname is Stubby. Last name was White. 4 years old. Missing August 9th, 1915. In a little town called Osier, O-S-I-E-R, Michigan. Yes, you're going to have a tough time finding that on any maps. I did quite a bit of research. It was a small town 32 miles north of Escanaba, Michigan. It's now a ghost town, but it was on an old railroad line. It was first settled in about 1880, and it's in Delta County, Michigan. It had its post office opened in 1898 and closed in 1901. It was most notable as a community for lumber and farming. The area is described as scattered fields for farming and deep, thick woods, swamps, and rivers. And when I first started to get onto this story, the first few things I read about it grabbed me. It said that Stubby was out berry picking with his mom near Rapid River, Michigan. Mom turned her back. Stubby disappeared. She searched for him, couldn't find him, he was gone. It stated that this season, the berries in Michigan were very full, ripe, and there was a huge crop. Stop right there. Now, many of you who follow me know that a subsection of the missing people are berry pickers. And I thought, wow, little boy missing with their mom, berry picking. This is a 10x hit. But the more I read, the more confusing it got. And it took me a few days of researching and probably 30 articles to read before I fully understood the complexity of the case and what truly occurred. So, Mr. and Mrs. Lester White owned a farm 7 miles north of Rapid River, Michigan. So, northern Michigan, Lake Superior. This is Escanaba, right here. And this is Rapid River. Now, Osier is up here, just about where the search zone is. Here's what became confusing. So the Whites owned a farm. Mrs. White was at the farm, but Mr. White also worked for a series of relatives and friends in Osier to make extra money. Well, Lowell White, Lester's brother, owned a large hay farm up in Osier, just north of there. And Lester went up to help his brother cut hay. And Mrs. White was highly pregnant, so to give her a break, he took Stubby, the 4-year-old, with him up to the brother's farm. So they were cutting hay. And the exact location was 3.5 miles west of Osier. Very, very rural area, even today. But in 1915, this place was mega remote. Well, August 9th, about 9 a.m., Lowell White and Lester had to move a series of bales. And they left Stubby with a hired hand, 23-year-old William Vincent. Vincent later said that they were there maybe an hour. Stubby started crying, missed his dad. And Vincent said he sat him down and said, hey, your dad's going to be back soon. Just sit right here, don't move. I've got to move some hay now and I'll be back real quick in about 10 minutes. Said he was crying pretty bad. Vincent returned in 10 minutes. Stubby was gone. He said he looked around, called his name, and then started to believe that Lester must have come and picked up his son. And he missed him. He didn't see him. This all ended up transpiring at about 11 a.m. Now, for the parents out there, I know you're going to say, oh, this sounds like a weak statement. But you got to understand. A 23-year-old guy with no kids, just trying to do his job. Just didn't think anything of it. Didn't think much of it. Very, very similar to, if you remember back, the Giordano case. 4-year-old boy walks up to some people in the river, says, "Hey, are there any bears around here?" And they're fishing. And these fishermen say, "Hey, no, kid, leave us alone." So last time Giordano was ever seen. Well, that was the last time that Lowell Stubby White was seen that day. So, 2 p.m., Lester White sees Vincent at the ranch house. They're having lunch. And they both look at each other and go, "Hey, where's Stubby?" "Well, I thought you had him." "Well, I thought you had him." Vincent goes on to explain what happened, and Mr. White goes, "No, I never picked him up." Vincent goes, "Well, where is he?" So they both leave. They get Dell White, the owner of the property. He goes out. And all three of them are searching the area where Stubby was last seen. It's essentially a cut down hayfield with not a lot around. Well, Dell has another farmhand. It's 6 p.m. now. And he tells the farmhand to get on the horse and ride to this person's house 13 miles away and get on the phone and call the sheriff. So this ranch hand rode 13 miles as hard and as fast as he could to the nearest phone to get a hold of the sheriff and get him to respond out to this property. Now this property is now on what we call the Gwynn State Forest. So very early in the morning, the following morning, the sheriff of Delta County arrives with 6 deputies. And initially, because they can't find the boy, he says, "Well, it must be bears and wolves. They must have killed him. We'll find the body and blood and crime scene." And Dell and Lester and Vincent and the rest of the group that are now searching from the city say, "No, we haven't seen anything. There's no sign of predation." So they search all day. They have about 25 people. They come up with nothing. Sheriff sends one of the men back in the car to get more men to come back out here. So August 11th, 50 men arrive from Rapid River, one of the biggest searches in Michigan history at this point. And they start talking about foul play. When they talk about foul play, there's nobody out there except Vincent. And everyone thought he was a good guy. And then they get 50 more men from Osier, from the surrounding area, farms, ranches, and they all join in. At about this point, the sheriff is scratching his head. He doesn't know what's going on. He's confused because they're not finding this little 4-year-old boy. How far can a 4-year-old boy go? Well, the retired sheriff, recently retired sheriff of the county named T.J. Coran, responds to the scene with a bloodhound from another part of the state. Bloodhound that's been used before. And the bloodhound is given pants from the boy by Lester. And now, the canine handler, the father, Lester, a reporter, and a deputy, all are following the bloodhound handler as the bloodhound is taking off towards the Rapid River in pursuit of the boy's scent, supposedly. Well, they get to the river. It's not a deep river. You and I could wade across it. They look around, there's nothing there. There's just a sandbar, nothing. But it would be much too big of a river for a 4-year-old to cross. So the handler takes the canine back to the point where the boy was last seen. And again puts the dog on the scent, and again the dog follows the same scent trail to the river. Now they're puzzled. They all have a powwow and they think, well, we don't see any tracks from Stubby going towards the river. But that dog sure is having a fit going towards the river. So they bring the dog back and they think, hey, we'll go one more time. And this time the dog does something completely obtuse. The dog takes off and runs at like a 45-degree angle, paralleling the river towards the forest, running it as fast as these guys can keep up. And this goes on for 3 miles through deep, thick forest. Until everybody comes to a very thick thicket of berries and thorn bushes, and the dog stops. So all the guys are looking, going, I'm not going in there. Nobody wants to go in there, but the dog's just looking in there. They said, well, he's not in there, we could see, but the dog sure wants to go in there. So they bring the dog back and they take him to another part of the thicket where you don't have to go through the thicket, but you could go around it. Dog refuses to move. I can tell you that this has happened more times than I can ever count. Dog refuses to track. Not that he didn't pick up a scent, it said he refused to move. Wow. That's a huge one, folks. That is a huge one. Now, during the course of my research on this case, multiple times in various articles from cities, it said that the berry crop in this area was extremely thick. That's always in the back of my mind. And the sheriff even said that there's no way Stubby's going to starve or be without water, because there's swamps, there's water, there's berries. He could live for weeks. Well, they went back and they talked about the Rapid River. And it's not deep, but it's deep enough that a 4-year-old couldn't cross it. Well, what they did is they put 50 men in that river. And they walked the river for 10 miles looking for Stubby. Took them 2 days. Didn't find anything. March 12th. Mrs. White finally gets word about her boy. A sheriff's car goes down, picks her up, and brings her back up to Dell's property. She's highly pregnant, and she's emotionally destroyed. You gotta remember, 32 miles back in 1915 was a long way. Very few people had cars, most people had horses. Riding 32 miles on a horse, that's a long way. She came up, she was destroyed. Multiple articles stated that Lester, Stubby's dad, had searched nonstop for 3 days. Would come into the search center, grab a sandwich, run back out and keep searching. Now that's a dad. That's the way dads act. The owner of the property, Lowell White, who was interviewed by a reporter, this is what he said. He said, if Stubby's not found, I've got to sell this property. There's no way I can keep this knowing my nephew disappeared here. No way. I'd have to sell it. I get that emotion. I feel the same way. Bad karma on that property. Later in the day, August 12th, the sheriff orders the search and rescue to double its size. They brought in 50 more men from Escanaba and Rapid River. And 3 miles from the point that Stubby was last seen, On the opposite side of the rapid river, they find a small boy's track. Not a shoe print, a track. So what they do is they say to the press, it's astounding we're finding this, because we never searched over there because nobody on the team believed that Stubby could cross the river, so why go over there? So they put 50 men in it, 2 bloodhounds, and they end up searching that area for 2 days. They don't come up with anything. August 13th, heavy rain hits the area late in the day. And the sheriff stated any tracks that would have been found were just washed away. Well, just prior to the rain, they found Stubby's shoe print in the middle of an orchard, about 3/4 of a mile from where he was last seen. Again, 50 searchers, 2 bloodhounds go into that area. Search for a day and a half. Nothing. They're yelling, they're screaming, looking. Some people think he's alive, maybe he's hiding because he's embarrassed, but nobody believes he's deceased. There was initial feeling that the wolves and bears might have killed him, but they said there was zero evidence of that. And then as they were searching deep in the woods, they said they found a giant bear trap. These things are nasty, folks, if you've never seen them. If a little boy fell into it, it could probably cut him in half. The big grizzly traps are huge. Even the black bear traps, huge. If you and I put our legs in there and put it in the right place, break your leg, easy. Well, they only found one, and they took it apart, but Dell said that he hadn't seen many bears in his area in a long time, so they didn't really consider it at that point. All of the articles in all the papers describe this area as dense forest, open hay fields, and a lot of swamps and water. 8/14, August 14th, a special train was organized by the sheriff's office to leave Escanaba. Leave Escanaba and go up to the search zone. It was a free train. Travel 32 miles to Osier, and it'd be loaded with searchers, food, and drinks. And then simultaneously, a series of cars were loaded up and left Gladstone and Rapid River, all headed for the search zone. And they were able to acquire 300 searchers that were walking between Maple Ridge and Osier. That was the work zone, search zone. That was on the 14th. Searchers stayed for 2 days. On August 16th, the formal search was terminated because they weren't finding anything. They couldn't find the boy. Now, Lester and Dell continued to search. I couldn't find anything that said if Mrs. White had the baby or what type of baby, boy or girl, she had. But August 24th, the 23-year-old farmhand, William Vincent, was arrested by the sheriff on suspicion of being involved in Stubby's disappearance. He was taken to the police station and questioned extensively by the sheriff and the prosecutor. Later on, they said, "Hey, would you allow us to question you with multiple people and just fire questions at you?" Vincent said, "Go at it. Bring them on." Well, they brought in several deputies, and they just fired questions at him. Boom, 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 trying to disrupt him. Everyone in that room stated that he never was sweating. He never stumbled, never made any inconsistent statements, never incriminated himself. They said they were flabbergasted. They thought they had him, but they said they didn't have anything. On August 25th, there was no evidence against Vincent, and the sheriff let him go. They never really had anything against Vincent, other than he was the last person to see Stubby. I think they were just trying to maybe coerce him into saying something. Now here's the part. I'm going to go over this so it's understood. Lowell Stubby White was 4 years old. Disappeared on his uncle's farm. Was never found. He was last seen by a farmhand, Vincent. There was never any tracks that pointed to him going into the river. But canines led to the river, and then on the opposite side of the river, they reported finding small human tracks on the other side. Now, canines also led to a berry thicket. And when the SAR team took the dogs to the other side of the thicket, they refused to move. That is not normal, folks. That indicates something is wrong. Vincent never made one incriminating statement, never showed any signs of guilt. He was let go. Let's think about this. Point of separation. Vincent and Stubby. Water everywhere in this area. Berries in full bloom. Canines can't track and find them. It's another mystifying Michigan case. Newberry, cluster of missing people right here. And then just off to the northwest from where the search zone was another cluster of missing people right here. You've got more people missing down here in Drummond. And then further out, Michigan, you have more missing people. This entire area is a missing person zone. So when I was reviewing this case in my mind, I said, Dave, what's one point that just doesn't make any sense? To me, the little track on the opposite side of the river. They said that there was no other little boys out there other than Stubby, so they couldn't understand how it could be anybody other than Stubby's track. Okay, maybe. But if 300 searchers that were at the scene, and none of them believed that a 4-year-old boy could cross the Rapid River, I'm sorry, folks, I got to go with them. The boy didn't cross the river. If the boy didn't cross the river, how did that track get on the other side? Or is that Stubby's track? Could it be the track of something or someone else? Berries. It seems that berries bring in a bad clientele. And more people disappear picking berries, being around berries, than I could even care to guess right now. Do I say this case is related to berries? Absolutely it is. Berries was brought up in a multitude of articles. So it happened to Lowell Stubby White. Only a few things. A bear or wolf got him. Well, If that was the case, then number one, those bloodhounds would have for sure tracked him. Guaranteed. Number two, no blood, no torn clothing, no screams were heard. No evidence of predation happened. Number three, could he have been abducted? Well, but abducted by what, Dave? Could he have been abducted by a human? Well, they were in the middle of one of the most rural areas of Michigan for 1915. And the only person that could have been involved in a human-to-human abduction was Mr. Vincent. Suffice it to say, he didn't do it. And then if he did do it, where's the body? Why wouldn't the canines track to the body? Come on now, you got to think logically. And the last one. If you watched my movie, Missing 411, the UFO Connection, you know where I'm going with this. I'm saying you got to follow the facts. You got to be reasonable. You got to understand what happened. I have no idea what happened. But to exclude something just because you think so isn't really cutting it. So friends, this was a special edition. It's a very complex case. To me, it's very interesting. But I'm sure it destroyed the White family. And I can only imagine what Mr. and Mrs. White felt like at the end of the day. I don't know if Del White sold his property, but if I was a betting man, I'd say he did. Paulides out.